really shocked too. I got into work, and my producer Weston, who is also a wrestling fan, said, hey, Paul Bearer died last night, and I got online and kind of read a couple of quick news tips about it, and obviously sad. As Chad mentioned, Paul Bearer, one of the last true wrestling managers, especially with WWE, before they kind of transitioned out of the manager mode, or were bringing in more of the divas to be the valets. My memories of Paul Bearer go back to Percival Pringle III. I remember him very well in World Class. I know he had started off before World Class, but when I started watching, he was with World Class and had managed Ravishing Rick Rude to the World Class equivalent of their heavyweight championship. Had managed Buzz Sawyer and Matt Bourne to the tag team titles. I think he was with the Rock and Roll RPMs. Had been with Eric Embry during the last little bit of World Class before it transitioned over to USWA. So I remember him from those days, and he was just that, kind of eccentric, oddball type manager. Carried the cane, wore the flashy jackets, had the blonde hair. And then seeing him transition to the WWE, it was quite an odd transformation. He went from that jovial, jolly-like, rich guy kind of character to a more macabre, morbid type of unique character in Paul Bearer. And, pairing him up with The Undertaker, I thought was perfect, and we'll get more into that part of the discussion in just a few minutes. But, like Chad said, he really had the staying power, too. I mean, he was with WWE from 91 until, I think, 2002, consistently, and then left briefly, went to TNA for a little bit, and then came back to the WWE off and on since until last year. And I really thought, too, we might have seen him return with The Undertaker for his match with CM Punk at WrestleMania, but definitely an icon in the business, and one of those guys who will, I think, forever, has obviously cemented a place in the world of professional wrestling history. When Undertaker first debuted at Survivor Series 1990, he was with Brother Love, and I thought at the time, this is another big guy. They're going to feed him to the Ultimate Warrior. They're going to feed him to Hulk Hogan. He's just one of these guys. He's a gimmick. He's a character. In and out. He'll be gone in a year. And then when they brought Paul Bearer in, to me, it kind of sealed the gimmick. It brought it all together. It made sense. You had this guy who was, an Undertaker. He had the body bags. He had the purple gloves, the hat, the jacket. From time to time, the Vulture. Paul Bearer sealed the deal and made that character, I think, what it is today. Now, I think Undertaker would have enjoyed success with his ability, but I think that adding that element of Paul Bearer definitely brought something to it. And then the evolution, not just of The Undertaker, but Paul Bearer evolved as well and went from that kind of macabre, Mortician-type character to more of the sadistic father, if you will, of Kane, in introducing that character. And I was in St. Louis at Bad Blood 97. I think Chad was too. We didn't know each other at the time. When when Kane debuted and ripped that door off of the Hell in a Cell and went in there and pile drove The Undertaker. And to me, it gave the Kane character kind of gave Paul Bearer new life, but I think Paul Bearer brought something to the Kane character as well, because Glenn Jacobs, let's face it, until Kane had floundered in the WWE and around the world. So I definitely think without that Paul Bearer piece of the puzzle, those characters would not be what they are today, or as complete as they are as we know them as icons today as well. Whether they induct him this year, next year, or whenever, sadly he will not be there to accept. I can understand why some fans would want to see him go in now. I mean, it makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense, but I could see the WWE capitalizing on the emotion now, because people are still emotional about it. A year from now, they won't be. They'll still be happy and excited to see him go in. I also felt like Eddie Guerrero, and I know there was more of a time window there, but I almost felt like the WWE kind of used that to their advantage, inducting him in as quickly as they did.
Did they do the same with Edge?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've ranted about, I think Shawn Michaels, I think Edge, even to an extent, Flair and Austin. I mean, to me, and I know other professional sports have a thing where it's 5 years or 3 years or whatever after they've retired or have passed away before they get inducted. I get the whole wanting to capitalize on guys while they're still hot. But Edge is probably the most glaring example of putting someone in too soon. But with Paul Bearer, I wouldn't be upset if they inducted him this year. I don't think it's necessary. I do understand why people want to see it happen this year because there's so much emotion right now, 48 hours removed from his death, that people want it now. But I do think that he's obviously had a Hall of Fame career. He will go in at some point. But then you kind of tie into this whole mentality of what would The Undertaker's role in his induction be, because we know that The Undertaker sits out of the Hall of Fame, doesn't even attend, or is at least not out in the crowd to kind of protect his character. And I would think that I can't imagine inducting Paul Bearer into the Hall of Fame without The Undertaker there. To me, doesn't make sense.
I think Taker has to give the speech.
I agree. So at this point, I think that inducting him now, and like Chad said, the class of 5 right now as it stands well enough on its own that I don't think you need to add anybody else to this class. And that's no disrespect to Paul Bearer, who once again I do believe has earned a spot in there, will one day be in there, but I don't think 2013 has to be the year that he goes in. I would like to think that WWE will not go there and use Paul Bearer's death in the Undertaker CM Punk storyline. I know people thought that Punk crossed the line when he did it with Lawler. The difference is, survived the heart attack. I think that, especially with it being this close still to Paul Bearer's death, I just think it would be kind of a tacky move if they did it. I would not be surprised if it happens. But I think that CM Punk and the WWE would take the high road, because let's face it, CM Punk can generate heat in other ways than to demoralize or pick on or attack the legacy of The Undertaker's former manager. And I think even at the last appearance of Paul Bearer, if you go logically and storyline-wise, Undertaker and Paul Bearer were estranged. So, Paul Bearer had turned on The Undertaker that one last time. So, to me, WWE, I hope, has more class than that and will take the high road and not incorporate Paul Bearer's death into this storyline with CM Punk and The Undertaker.